Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to Islamic Economic Series. Today, we're going to tackle a really foundational question, one that was posed by the great economist Joseph Schumpeter. Can economics ever truly be a pure science? Now, this is a critical starting point for any school of thought, especially as we try to build frameworks that are grounded in both solid principles and scientific rigor. We'll look at what he called the economist's original sin, we'll break down his key concepts of vision versus analysis, and then we'll see these ideas in action with three absolute giants of economics. And finally, we'll get to a pretty surprising twist about the role that ideology plays in all of this.
All right, let's jump right in with Section 1, the economist's original sin, and this inescapable problem of bias. So this really gets to the heart of it, doesn't it? The central question Schumpeter puts on the table is this: can economics ever be a pure science, totally free from the biases of the person doing the economics?
I mean, think about it, right? In physics, a falling stone is a falling stone. Doesn't matter if the physicist is a capitalist or a socialist, but in economics, it's a completely different ballgame. An argument about, say, monetary policy can be completely dismissed just because the economist comes from a certain background or holds a particular worldview. Suddenly, their work isn't just data. It's seen as a direct reflection of who they are.
And here's what makes this so incredibly tricky. We're not talking about people deliberately lying or fudging the numbers. Ideology isn't a lie. It's a sincere, deep-seated belief about how the world works. So how on earth do you even begin to guard against that? Well, to help us, Schumpeter gives us an analytical toolkit, and it starts with two key concepts: vision versus analysis.
Okay, so everything, according to Schumpeter, starts with vision. Now, this isn't some kind of mystical power. It's that pre-scientific, gut feeling that an economist gets before any of the formal research even starts. It's that initial hunch, that what-if moment, that intuitive grasp of a problem that kicks the whole process off. It's the raw material, the unrefined idea. But of course, a vision on its own isn't science. That's where analysis comes in. This is the hard graft. This is the rigorous stuff, building the models, gathering the data, and really putting that initial vision to the test. You can think of analysis as the system of objective checks and balances that's designed to refine, to validate, or, importantly, to completely disprove that initial hunch. So you have these two really distinct stages. Vision is where all our personal experiences, our worldviews, our biases, that's where they live. It's intuitive, it's pre-scientific. Analysis, on the other hand, is meant to be the exact opposite. It's structured, it's scientific, it's supposed to be objective and rigorous. And this is Schumpeter's crucial point. Ideology sneaks in at the vision stage. So the real test of any economist's work is whether their rigorous analysis can control and correct that initial vision, or if the vision just ends up contaminating the whole process. So let's see how this actually plays out with three absolute titans of economics: Smith, Marx, and Keynes.
All right, first up to the plate, the father of modern economics himself, Adam Smith. Now, you'd probably expect him to be this huge champion of the capitalist class, right? But Schumpeter argues his vision was actually way more nuanced than that. You see, Smith's vision wasn't that of a cheerleader for business. He was more of a detached academic, looking at the whole system with this really cool critical eye. As this quote shows, he saw the lazy landlord as an unnecessary evil, and the capitalist as merely a necessary one. That's hardly a ringing endorsement.
So what's the final call on Smith? Well, Schumpeter concluded that while Smith definitely had an ideology, it was mostly just window dressing. He called it semi-philosophical foliage that you could basically trim away without hurting the core scientific arguments at all. In the end, Smith's common sense and his deep respect for the facts were just so strong that his analysis actually rose above and corrected the biases in his initial vision.
Okay, now let's flip the coin completely and look at Karl Marx, because here Schumpeter says we see a case where vision doesn't just influence the analysis, it completely and utterly dominates it. For Marx, the vision came first, and it was everything. It was this epic, grand narrative of history as a relentless class struggle, just marching inevitably towards a massive explosion. And according to Schumpeter, all of Marx's scientific work that came after was designed not to test this vision, but to prove it. And what that means is certain core parts of his vision, like the idea of the increasing misery of the masses, they were basically untouchable. They were non-negotiable. They were just too essential to his message to ever be questioned. even when the evidence might point the other way. The result, Schumpeter argues, was a total victory of ideology over analysis. The science was simply a servant to the vision.
All right, our final case study, John Maynard Keynes, is maybe the most complex and subtle of them all. Here, the relationship between vision and analysis gets really interesting.
You have to remember the context here. Keynes's vision was forged in the fire of the Great Depression. He looked around and saw a mature, stagnant, almost arteriosclerotic capitalist system, a society that was trying to save way more than it could possibly invest profitably. This created this incredibly powerful vision of economic failure that just resonated so deeply with everyone at the time. And Schumpeter's take on Keynes is, well, it's just brilliant. Because Keynes was different from Marx. He was a master craftsman, a technical wizard who built this powerful, sophisticated analytic armor around his vision. And that armor made the ideology underneath much, much harder to see. In the end, Schumpeter argues it was the powerful appeal of the ideology, perfectly timed for the crisis that really won the day. And it was all supported by an analysis that was built on assumptions that just happened to perfectly reflect his initial vision.
So, when you put it all together, you see how an economist's vision can be tamed by their analysis, like with Smith, or it can completely conquer it, like with Marx. Which brings us to Schumpeter's really surprising conclusion about ideology itself. Is it just a problem we need to solve, or could it actually be a necessary fuel?
So, if ideology is always going to be there like this contaminant we can never fully get rid of, then what's the point? What hope is there for any genuine scientific progress in economics?
And this is where Schumpeter just completely pulls the rug out from under us. He argues that the very thing we've been seeing as a source of bias is also the essential ingredient for progress. As he says right here, though we proceed slowly because of our ideologies, we might not proceed at all without them. Think about that. That initial vision, that wellspring of ideology, is the very thing that gives us new questions, new ways of looking at the world, and the raw creative energy that pushes science forward. It's the impure, yes, but it's the necessary fuel for the entire engine of discovery. And that leaves all of us, especially those of us involved in research, with one absolutely vital question to ask ourselves. What is the unexamined vision that's driving my own work?
See you in the next one. Subscribe, like, and comment.